Hey guys, what's going on? This is Atav here, back with another episode on the channel, and today we are going to see how Firebase version 9 works. So recently Firebase released a new version for its JavaScript SDK, and today we are going to test it out with React and see what all has changed. And they have introduced a lot of breaking changes, and the old version do not work with the new version, so it's a lot messier. So in this video we are going to see exactly what has changed and how to deal with everything. So let's go ahead and quickly create a new React app. So npx create React app, and I'll name it React Firebase YT. I'll hit enter, and now let's go to Firebase. In the meantime this is installing. Let's go to Firebase. Now let's create a new project. I'll call it React Firebase YT. I'll hit continue, and then I don't mind with Google Analytics, so I'll press continue. I'll select default account for Firebase. I'll click create project. Now this should take some time. It won't take a lot of time. Okay, so your new project is ready, so I'll press continue, and this should open our project. And there's a lot of stuff we need to do. First of all, let's set up the web app because we need this. I'll just call this React Firebase. I have a typo here. Okay, and I'll say register app. Now this should set up a web SDK, and we should be able to use Firebase in the web. We don't need to do any of this configuration right now. We'll just remove it for now, and let's go to Firestore database first. Let's set up our database because we would need this in this tutorial. We are going to need Firebase, Firestore. We are going to need authentication, and we will see how that works in the newest version of Firebase. So let's see. So I'll press enable. This should say provisioning cloud Firestore. It should not take a lot of time. Okay, so it took like 20 seconds I guess, and we are here. We don't need to do anything. We don't need to start any database collections or anything right now. We will just go to authentication, and we will enable authentication, and we will also enable Google provider. So let's go ahead. I'll choose the first native provider, which is like the email and password. I'll click save. Now let's go ahead and set up add new provider, and I'll click on Google. I'll press enable, and this should ask me project support email. I'll just select my email here, and I'll press save. Now this should set up Google authentication for us in our Firebase app, and I think our work is done. We just need to grab a config from here. So let's go here in the settings, into the project settings, and let's scroll down, and now we should see this code here. So we need the Firebase config for now. We don't need the Google Analytics and everything, so we will just set it up manually. We need the Firebase config. Now let's go back to terminal and let's open the React app. So remember, I have just copied the Firebase config. We are going to need it. So here's a VS code. Oh, okay, I opened it in the wrong directory. Let's go into React Firebase YT, and I'll open Visual Studio Code here. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and close out package.json right now, and let's go ahead and remove some files we don't need. We don't need app.test.js, we don't need logo.svg, and we don't need setup tests. So we'll just go ahead and remove this, and let's go ahead to app.js, remove everything. We don't need this for now. Let's go ahead to app.js. We need to remove everything here. We will rename this to app because our CSS is using the specific class name. And by the way, we won't be focusing on styles in this episode. I will be providing a CSS file. You can just grab it from the GitHub repository, and you can just paste it in your project. I just want to keep this video exclusively for Firebase. So let's go ahead and check our index.css. Okay, there's nothing sketchy here. Now let's go to app.css, and I'll just paste in the CSS we have here. Perfect. You can just get this from the GitHub repository. The GitHub repository in the description. You can just go ahead and get that. And now let's go ahead and set up the Firebase thing. Now we need to set up a file for Firebase, so let's go ahead and create that. I'll call it firebase.js. And now I need to install something, so let's go ahead and open up the terminal. I'll say npm install Firebase. This is the first package. This is from Firebase itself, and the next package we need is React Firebase hooks. So this is a very handy package. This is going to be the most useful package you deal with when you are using Firebase. So it should be React Firebase hooks. Okay, I'll press enter. Now this should start installing this. Okay, so the packages is installed, and now let's go ahead and start our React app. So I'll say npm start, and this should start our React app. I want to install another port because I already have one React app running. Now this should open up our React app. Let's just wait for it. Okay, so we are getting a blank screen because basically we don't have anything on React app. So let's go ahead and set up Firebase first. So I'll say import, and the first thing we need from Firebase is like let's go ahead and import from Firebase/app. So we need the first function we need is the Initialize app. This is going to start up our application. So now let's go ahead and paste in the config here. Oh, actually we need to get the config again here. So I'll copy this, I'll go back and I'll paste this here. Perfect. Now let's create a new variable. I'll call it an app, and I'll say initialize app, and I need to pass in the config. So I'll say Firebase config. Now we need to also initialize the database and authentication modules. So we need to import these separately for the first time. So I'll just say import, and I'll say from Firebase/auth. So I'll just do import this first, and I'll say get auth. And we also need a function from Firestore so that we can also initialize our database. So let's go ahead and say import, and I'll say from Firebase/Firestore, and now here I'll say get Firestore. And now we can just go ahead and say const db is equal to get Firestore, and I'll say this, we need to get the Firestore from the app. So I'll just pass in app in the parameter, and next we will get auth. So I'll say const auth is equal to get auth, and I'll pass in the app. Now this should get the authentication module as well. Now let's go ahead and we need to make some functions which will make things simpler for us to deal with in the actual UI part. So let's go ahead and create a new functions. So the first thing we will do is enabling Google authentication. So to do that we need to get a Google provider. So we'll say const Google provider, and we'll say new Google provider, and you see Google auth provider. I'll just press enter, and it should auto import this, and now we will make the function. So const login with Google, and this should be an asynchronous function, and whenever I open an asynchronous function, the best thing I first do is I'll just say try catch, because I always want to handle errors first. So I'll just say console.error, and I'll say I'll say error, and then I'll say alert error dot message. And now let's handle the actual login part. So I'll say const res. So this will actually get back the user after authenticating. Now we will be using await statement, so it will wait for the authentication to complete. So I'll say sign in with pop-up. So this is a function from Firebase. So I'll just go ahead and pass in the auth and the Google provider. So if you had any other authentication option like Facebook or GitHub, so you just have to pass in the respective provider here, and the authentication would be successful. Now we need to get the user, so let's go ahead and get the user. So at this point, on this line 22, if the authentication fails, so if there is a situation where the user put in wrong credentials, or if the user cancelled the login, the catch block will be immediately executed and the message will be shown to the user. So we don't need to worry about if the user is authenticated or not. We are just assuming that the user is authenticated and we are just moving forward with that. So I'll just say we need to get the user, so I'll say rest.user, and then we need to create a query. So what we are doing here is we are going to check the database. So we are going to check the database. If the user exists in the database, it's okay, it's well and good. If not, we are going to create that user in the database, because by default Firebase does not do this for us. We need to do this by ourselves. So let's go ahead and do this. And we are, by the way, we are storing this in the database because we need to keep track of the names of the users. So let's do that. Const q is equal to query. So basically every query should start with a query function. Let's just complete this sentence and I'll tell you what this means. So I'll say collection. First I need to pass in the DB, so everything is modular, so I need to always pass in the module. And then I'll say user, so this is the name of the collection. Then I need a new function, I'll call it where. It's from Firebase, so is it imported? Yep. And then I'll say UID, so this is the field name, and I'll say the condition, so it should be, you see IntelliSense coming in clutch here. Yep. And then I'll say user.uid. Now what this line means is that, hey, this is a query. The query should first get the collection, and in the collection we need to check this case. So like we need to get that record whose UID is equal to this thing, right? And if this does not exist, we will create a new database entry. So let's do that. So we will say const docs is equal to await get docs, and we need to import this function. And now I'll say q. Now this query should be executed, and now we can check. So we can just go ahead and say docs.docs. So this has a property called docs, which is an array, and we can just check the length. And if it's 0, like there is no user existing, we can create a new user. So we can say await add doc, and again the first thing we always pass is the collection. So we will pass in the collection, we will say the module is DB and the collection is users, and then we can add the things we want to add to this specific record. So these are all the details, all the fields. So first field I want is UID. So the basic UID I got from the Google provider, so we can just do this. I'll say user.uid, and then I'll say name, I'll say user.display name, and then I want the auth provider. So this is something we are storing for our own purposes. So I'll say auth provider is Google, so that we know that this dude is actually coming from Google authentication and not our local authentication. This is just for your own reference. And then we can have email, and I'll say user.email. So Google has all of this data and it just provides us, and we just need to add this to database. And imagine that if there is a user existing, we don't need to do anything. The authentication will still be successful. We just know that there is a user with that Google ID in our database. We don't need to worry about anything else. Now let's go ahead and work on the registration, the normal registration with email and password. So the function name is really big, so register with email and password. So you can always go ahead and reduce the size of the name of whatever you want. So I'm just doing this so that you guys know better what I'm doing here. So I'm going to say asynchronous function, and this should have some parameters. So the first thing is the name, because again we are going to store the name in the database. Name, email, and password. And now first thing first, try catch error, and then we are going to have console.error. I'm just going to copy this from here and I'm going to paste it. Perfect. Now in the try block, let's go ahead and create a new res. So we are going to again create a new user. So create user with email and password. So this function is from Firebase. We need to pass in the authentication module, email and password. So we are not dealing with the name yet here. Why? Because this is a Firebase function. So basically Firebase will try to create the user with these credentials. So if the user already exists, the user won't be created and it will automatically fall back to the catch block and the rest of the things won't go forward. So that's how it works. Now let's go ahead and assume that the user is authenticated. Now we need to create the user in the database. So let's do that. Const user is equal to res.user. Now we can go ahead and add the doc simply. So we just need to do anything else. We'll say const add doc, await add doc. We need to provide the collection. The collection is in users, and then have we done this correctly? No, yeah. I imagine that I did something wrong, so this should be users here. Okay. Now we just need to pass in the fields here. So I'll just copy this at this point. So this is how this should work. So user.uid. So Firebase again gives us the UID of this user, and name we are getting from the parameters. Auth provider is local by default, and email we are getting from the parameters. So that's how it works. Now let's create a login with email and password function. So we are basically just creating all the helper functions in just one file so that we don't have to mess with all of these things in the UI files. So let's do this. Const login with email and password. This should be an asynchronous function with email and password, because again you don't need name while you are logging in, right? So I'll say try catch. This should be. Now let's do the same thing. I'm going to copy paste. Now I just need to do one thing here. Await sign in with email password. Now I wanted to sign in with email and password from Firebase, and I need to pass in the auth, the email and the password. It's that simple. Now everything should be taken care of. Now we just need to make one more function, which is logout, and it's not even that complex. Now this should just do one thing: execute sign out function from Firebase. So Firebase just keeps track of all the users, so we don't need to worry about local storage and everything. Firebase keeps track of that. Now we need to just export all the things. So this is the export statement right here. I'll just copy this from here. I'll paste this. Perfect. So this is the export statement. Go ahead and we are just exporting the statements here. So login with Google. Something is wrong with it. Login with Google. Perfect. Now the Firebase file is done. Now we just need to deal with the app.js. So assuming that you already have the CSS file ready from my GitHub repository, this might be easy for you. Now let's go ahead and have 3 pieces of state here. So I'll just go ahead and paste this here. So perfect. And these are 3 states. So this can be mapped to our input boxes which we are going to make. Now let's go ahead and create a new container here. So I'll say dot container. Oh, this doesn't work for me. Okay. Div class name container, and I'll add a new container title here. Make sure you follow the class names because that's what we have in the CSS file, or you can just edit those as you want. So container title, I'll say login or sign up. Perfect. Now we are going to have 3 input boxes, one for name, one for email and one for password. So let me go ahead and show you how that looks. So we are going to have input type. So first is for name. So we are going to have name and then we are going to have the placeholder as name. Then we are going to have the value as the state variable name, and whenever somebody changes the value inside the box, we need to change the state also. So we are going to say here, we are going to get the event, and we are going to say set name, we are going to say e dot target dot value. This way we can map the state with this text box, and the state will be updated every time somebody types something in. Now we'll go ahead and copy this. We don't need to give it a class name. We are going to copy this, and we need to paste this 2 more times. Now let's do this for email. So I'll say email, placeholder should be email again, value should also be email, and this should be set email. Now let's go ahead and make it the type password, because then it masks the input. I'll keep the placeholder password. The value should also be password. Yeah, all of this is repetitive, by the way. And I'll also give it the function name as set password. Perfect. Now we need to create 2 buttons which will do all of the stuff. So we are going to create the first button should be of login with email and password. So I'll just say button on click. So this should perform a function, and that function should be login. Actually, is it correct? Yeah, login with email and password, and we need to pass in the email and password here. Perfect. I'll say login, and then we need to copy this function, and we need to make a sign up button. So I'll say register with email and password, and this also should have the name, and I'll say register here, and then I'll have a new button which will help us continue with Google. So I'll just paste it again here. I'll say login with Google, and I'll say continue with Google here. I'll save this file. Now this is taking some time to compile. Let's go back. Let's see. Yes, now this should be working properly, but the thing is that we haven't even specified what will happen after the authentication. So basically after authentication it will do nothing. It will just show this page because we haven't instructed it yet what to do. So here's where the React Firebase hooks thing comes in handy. We are going to get the auth state here. By using just Firebase it would have been like little bit more difficult, but React Firebase hooks makes it like very easy. So let's go ahead and we have a user loading and error, and this comes from the use auth state. Okay, we need to import it, but okay, let's do it right now. So import use auth state from React Firebase hooks /auth, and now we need to pass in the auth module here. So we'll just do this. Perfect. Now what I need to do is whenever the user is login, we need to get the name of the user from the database. So how do I do that? Like, there are many approaches here. I can just click the button and get the name, but the best way I can find here is by checking if the user is authenticated or not, and if the user is authenticated, I'll check the username automatically. So for that I can just use a use effect hook. I'll import it, and now the first parameter is a function which is run whenever the dependencies, like the second parameters, are changed. So our dependency here is user. So basically whenever user is authenticated, the user variable changes. So whenever the user variable changes, this function will be run, and if the user is authenticated, the new name will be fetched from the database. So let's do this. So if the user is not defined, so if user is not authenticated, we just don't want to proceed further because it can cause errors we are presuming that the user is authenticated already, so we can just do fetch name here. So it's safe to say that whenever we are on this line, the user is already authenticated, because we have just booted out all the people who are not authenticated in this line. Now we are going to make a new function called fetch name, because we have included this here. I'll copy this name. I'll say const fetch name is equal to async and perfect. And now I'm going to have a try catch. Error console.error error alert should be something went wrong. And now here we need to go ahead and find the username, right? So user's name, right? So we're going to create a query like we have done on the firebase.js file. So I'll say query. We need the collection first of all, so I also need to import the query. Yep. And the collection, and we need to pass in the db module, so we are going to import it. And we have the collection is users, and then we need to pass in the condition of where the uid is equal to the user.uid. Perfect. Now we need to execute this query, so we are going to do const doc is equal to await get docs. We're going to import it and pass in the query. Now we are going to get the data, so const data is equal to await doc.docs 0. So we need the first document, because we know that there's only one user with that uid. So uid means unique id, so yeah, there should be only one. So we are going to get the data, so this function should give us the data inside this doc. Now we are going to set the display name. So we haven't made that state yet, right? So we are going to make the state so that we can display the name on the screen. So we are going to make a new state, so const display name set display name, and we are going to make a new state. By default this state should be empty, and now we can just say set display name data dot name, as simple as that. Now we need to do something. Now there's still that problem, like if I authenticate, it's still here and I'm still seeing the login screen. So what should I do? So there is one, you can use a lot of different things. You can use React Router, but I think to keep this tutorial simple, I'm just going to pass in conditions here. So I'm just going to cut all of these things. I don't need it right now. And then I'm going to use a ternary operator to check if the user is authenticated or not, and then show the screens accordingly. So if the user is authenticated, we need to see something. But if the user is not authenticated, we are going to paste the previous code which we just cut. Perfect. Now we need to handle what we see if the user is authenticated. So we are going to reuse the old CSS. I'm going to copy this div. I'm going to paste it here. And I'll just remove this and I'll say display name. And now we are going to have a button. So button on click, and this should perform a function which is log out. And we are going to say log out. Now if I save this file, go back here. Now let's try to create a new user using just the email and password and name. So I'll say test. I'll say test at test.com. I'll say test123. I'll register. I don't want to save the password, so yeah, you should see test here. If I log out, and I'm going to refresh this page just in case, and I'll say test at test.com. test123. I'm going to log in this time, and you said it should fetch our name. Yeah, so it should come as test. Perfect. Now I'm going to log out and I'm going to continue with Google now. Let's wait. I'll select my account. Something went wrong. Okay, let's see what went wrong here. Okay, something might just be wrong. Let's see. Okay, now it shows me. I don't. Oh, it might be some sort of glitch or something. Let's try again. I'll close this. I'll refresh the page. I'll say continue with Google. I'll choose my account. Yeah, now it shows me my name, and if I just log out, it's disappeared. So yeah, that was it for this episode, guys. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comment section below. And this is the latest version of Firebase. I thought it would be helpful, and so because of the upgrade of Firebase, many of the old tutorials have been broken now, and you might need to migrate them to Firebase latest version. So this is how you do it. You can just find the code and replace it with the new one, and it will start working again. So let me know what you think about this video. How was it? Did it help you? Did you got any value from this episode? And just hit the subscribe button if you find value in my channel, and hit the like button if you really like the video. That was it for this video, guys. Bye.